Welcome back to Podcast Recovery, everyone. We're your hosts, David O.
And Eric V.
There you are. See, the lag, it still gets me, Eric. We've done it
It's
100 times.
It's all right. We're about to upgrade that. So, yeah.
There's upgrades on the horizon. Fantastic. Yes. All right. Well, today we are joined by our very special guest, Don. How are you doing today, Don?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good.
I'm doing well, man. I'm excited for the new season of Podcast Recovery and what all we're going to reveal. So,
glad to be here.
Yeah, man. Where are you from?
I'm from Tampa Bay, Florida, originally from upstate New York, but I was raised pretty much in Tampa Bay.
Nice. And I know we just spoke about it, but I'll say congratulations to the Tampa area for your Super Bowl victory.
Yes, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You had so much to do with it, Don. I felt you deserved a tip of the cap.
Yes. Well, I'm a part in it that I actually lived there. So it was a long time coming, and glad to see it come to pass. So
yeah, man.
Yeah.
So when were you first introduced to recovery?
I was first introduced to recovery when I went to a meeting in Los Angeles, California, in 1987, and I didn't get it, and I didn't want to get it, and so it was a long journey to find my way back to a recovery meeting. And the next time I went to a recovery meeting specifically was in 2009.
That's a long journey.
It is a huge journey, yeah. And it was a rough one. And I went because I got arrested for possession of drugs, and I knew I had to do something, so I went to a meeting. But there was still a lot of journey left in me even after that. So, yeah.
All right.
A lot of bottom.
Yeah. How long have you been clean?
I've been clean since March 22nd, 2013. I had been clean 15 months before that, and I had a relapse. And since that day, I've been clean and haven't drank or used any drugs or any mind-altering substances since then. And I'm engaged in recovery and enthused about recovery. And today, I love my life and wouldn't trade it for the world. So
awesome.
Yeah.
So you're coming up on 8 years.
Yes, I am.
Congratulations, man. That's awesome.
Yes.
All right. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you to share your story with us. So take it away.
All right. Well, I'll talk a little bit about what life was like before recovery, and then the process that led me to recovery, and then what life has been like since then. And so my childhood, I was raised in Tampa Bay, as I said, and I was born in the mid '60s, and during the early '70s, and my parents used drugs, and I heard a lot of great music back then, and I saw my parents drinking and using, and I went through some stuff at a very young age. I was abused by a neighbor. I got a little older, and a family friend of ours who I looked up to, like an uncle, committed suicide right in front of me. And somewhere along really violently too, he jumped and impaled himself on a locked, like, buck knife,
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was really intense. And I remember to this day, my reaction to that was to just go into a numbed emotional state. I just told myself I'm not going to cry. I remember sitting in my dad's truck, and tears were pouring down my eyes. I looked in the mirror and I said, "Donnie, you will not cry. You can laugh at anything." And somehow I just turned it off, And later that evening, when Billy's wife and my mom were bawling in the living room, it irritated me that they were feeling this, And I began to really disassociate myself from my own feelings and being connected with myself, And I was uncomfortable in my own skin, and I didn't want to experience emotions. And I remember that being a hallmark of how things were for me as as a childhood and in my childhood. And I had good parents. They kind of turned it around and they started taking us to church and they cleaned it up but it was a little late for me by then. And I started getting high at the age of 10. And for me, I felt like I had found the way, I found an escape that worked for me. I loved the feeling of being high. I loved the people that I was around because they reminded me of what my mom and dad and that whole atmosphere had been like a few years before they turned it around. Yeah. And it was cool. And they, so from the day I got high, it only took about 2.5 years for my life to become a complete train wreck. I started skipping school, and I got busted for public intoxication, and I got expelled from 2 schools for possession of drugs. And my parents put me in an institution, an inpatient drug program. And my mom told me we were going to a new school, and I believed her. But it turns out I got dropped off at this place that was a secure facility, and they thought that I would be home in a few months or whatever. But pretty much I never went back home again. I wound up becoming a runaway in a ward of the state and the juvenile justice system, and I would get out and I would commit crimes and I would use dope, and the drugs got harder. I went to prison the first time at age 16 for stealing cars and doing all this stuff. And, so my life became just a cycle of doing time and getting out and doing drugs, And I remember that when I would get out of prison or get out of jail or get out of the mental hospital or wherever it was that I had been at, I felt so isolated and different from everybody else, and I remember just feeling like I didn't fit in anywhere. And the only place that I felt like I kind of semi-fit in is when I was alone and I was either had a needle in my arm or I was smoking crack or I was, just in oblivion, by myself, and it was a really lonely place, and when you're doing that, and living like that and chasing that, it doesn't take long for it to catch up with you in jail or jails, institutions, and death. For me, it turned out to be the jails and the institutions and many near-death experiences. And I was homeless and dumpster diving and just all of that. And I came to a place in life. I did over 20 years for bank robberies. Once I did
bank robberies.
Yes, yeah.
That's badass.
Yeah, it was. When I talk about it, people ask me about it. They say, "Damn, man, you actually robbed a bank?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And it wasn't like Hollywood. It was. No,
I'm sure it was.
Yeah. It was just like I was scared and shaking and almost like nauseous after I did it, and I was trying to find dope, and I was deluded because I had been up days, and it wasn't pretty, man. And I would go on these binges, and I would literally drive myself insane after being up for days and days, and speed and meth and coke, and that can do that to you for a few days, and maybe I'm a little paranoid anyway, but I would wind up thinking that the government was after me and peeking out windows and all that stuff, and I just did some really crazy stuff, man, and Can
I ask a question real quick?
Sure, go right ahead.
What was the most you ever got from a bank robbery?
Oh, I think it wasn't a lot. It was just a single teller situation, and
okay.
4 to 6, maybe $7,000. It wasn't that, but it's enough to get.
That's a hell of a score, dude.
When you're just looking for one more, that's a lot more, and so I would be very, it did job, I guess you could say, and so I wound up. I did 4 years for the feds, and for ones that I was busted for out in Los Angeles, and I'd already done a few years just already up to that point in my life, on and off, through some of the things I described, and And I got out, and I, you know, I was going to do everything right, and I was going to, you know, I, you know, got in a band in prison, a metal band, and you know, and so I'm going to get out. I'm going to, you know, do music and this and that, and
yeah.
But you know, I wound up right back in the same position. You know, my parents tried to help me, and you know, I really disappointed a lot of people. And within a matter of 6 or 7 months, you know, I was doing the same shit. You know, and wound up being sentenced to 22 years in prison in Florida.
Wow.
The Department of Corrections for a string of bank robberies for 6 of them, and so I spent that whole time searching for truth, you know what I mean, and trying to figure out what the hell just happened, you know. And you know, when they sentenced me to the 22 years, it was like a crush, you know. I could just feel his weight on me, and it's funny. For the first time in my life, you know, I thought to myself, wait a second here, man. Most 23-year-olds are not like sitting in jail waiting to go to prison because they've been sentenced to 22 years for fucking bank robbery. This shit is not. Yeah. What the fuck is wrong with me? And so I got into religion for several years, and then I, you know, meditated a lot for a few years after that, and I read a lot. I read the dictionary. I read, you know, I mean, I just really, and you know, at the end, I thought, well, you know, I don't know what it's all about, man. I just know that I don't want to do that again when I get out. You know, when I found so I just knew that I just didn't want to get high, and I thought that, hey, man, 15. I got out after 15 years, and I thought, well, you know, 15 years, you know, I haven't smoked crack, you know, and my problem is really simple. It's cocaine. I just don't need to do cocaine no more, and so I won't, you know. And I got out. I started smoking weed. I drank a little bit, and then these feelings of not fitting in came over me. You know, at work, people would ask me to go out, and I would kind of, well, what if they got to know me, and what if they found out about my past? And you know, no, I can't go out, man. Thanks for asking, though. And you know, but Dawn is going to be there, and she wants to get to know you more. She works around the cubicle over there, and I'd be like, man, I dude, believe me, I want to, but I was scared inside, and I wound up waiting at home and getting high and doing bong hits and watching South Park and playing guitar, and just all by myself, man. And so eventually, I did it again. I started smoking crack, and I wound up committing another bank robbery in 2009. And that's after I started doing some meetings, as I discussed earlier. I'd gotten busted for a possession of cocaine, and I actually beat that at trial. And I a week later, I did that bank robbery. And I was in a really horrible state of mind when I did it. I'd been up for days, and the court system had changed a little bit. They looked at mental health issues a little differently than they did, you know, 20 years before. And they sentenced me to a mental health program that took people around to meetings. And they didn't really sentence me. They court ordered me to go there. And they knew I had some serious, like, delusional, I was, you know, I was crazy. and
cocaine will do that to you.
It did it to me. And then so I started going to meetings and getting exposed to that. And I started getting a sense of hope that maybe, who knows, someone like me could actually put together a life. Maybe if I listen to somebody, or I ask for help, and you know. But it was hard, man. It was really hard asking for help. I was like kind of shell shocked because I mean I had never gone to high school. I had never gone to. I didn't know what it was like to have friends. I didn't know what it was like to have a life at all. There was no life that I was trying to go back to, you know. I thought about recovery as a place where it'll set you back to where you were, you know, and so you can move on from there. And there wasn't any spot that I could move on from, you know, and I didn't feel like anybody could relate to that.
Yeah.
So I had a few years of struggle, and you know, I went on more binges, and I kept using, and unfortunately I didn't rob any more banks, and but I would wake up in mental hospitals and stuff like that, And I wound up asking someone to sponsor me at a meeting, and they said sure, and they took me to a recovery workshop, and this was in 2011, and they were talking about self-centeredness being at the root of addiction and many types of dysfunction. And when I heard that, I was like, man, that kind of made sense to me in a way. And I realized for the first time that really what was at the heart of it for me was this feeling that I was not good enough, and that there was something wrong with me, that I was different, and I was a horrible person, and that if you got to know me, you really wouldn't like me. And I looked at all the decisions that I've made in my past as just evidence that I was a real piece of shit, you know? And that's a heavy burden to bear, man. But I realized somehow during that meeting that was a lie, that it was not the truth, and that I was worth fighting for, and that my life was precious, and that I was a good person, just as good as anybody else. And for some reason that was a moment of an awakening for me, that was the game changer, you know? And when the thought of getting high came over me, you know, and I had the means to do it, I was like the wolf man, you know. It was like the moon had come out, and my stomach would turn and my knees would buckle, and I would have to take a shit like immediately. It's like, that's how bad it was, you know, and I could never, I couldn't get past that, you know, and it was just how fucked up I was. But when I had realized that for the first time in my life, when, you know, I was at the homeless shelter, and they handed out bus passes, and they handed me a bus pass, and it was like for a month, and I knew that I could walk a block away and trade it for some crack, and I got that feeling, you know, it came over me, and, you know, I got scared, and then I remembered, you know, I heard my sponsor's voice in my head saying, it's just a feeling, it'll pass. You don't ever have to use again. Just call me, you know. And for the first time in my journey, I was able to call him, and I didn't use that day. And you know, we started doing step work and addressing some of the issues in my perception and my mindset, and in light of the steps and all of that. And man, things began to turn around for me. You know, I began to put together a life, and I met a woman in the rooms, and life began to, and I, you know, got friends, and I just felt really connected for the first time in my life, man. I felt like I had friends, and I had, you know, I had this girl, and I had a life, and I couldn't believe, man, that it was like I had been away for so long, and that my life was beginning to turn around. I had a lot of hope and excitement, and life was really good, man, you know. And so we moved in together, her and I, and got engaged, and then, like, right after we got engaged, I relapsed, you know. I had and I took something personal that she said, and I got all in my head about it, and, you know, it just triggered all these feelings. And I had just gotten on step 4, you know.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, man. And I was like, just, there was all these feelings, and I was getting to get some awareness of all these issues that I had, and I was like, oh, a little sensitive, and I don't know. I woke up in the morning and said, fuck it, I'm going to get high, and I did, and she got this feeling that something was up, and she came back and, you know, caught me getting high, and I had the crack in my hand, and I held it up, and she was trying to get it from me to throw it away, and she couldn't get it from me, and she was begging with me to get to a meeting, and, you know, she had already called her sponsor, who called my sponsor, and they were like on the way to do an intervention, and she stepped back 2 feet, and then she kicked me in the nuts, and so I dropped that shit, and that is the last time. That's the last time I got high, man. And so
it was a real kick in the nuts.
It was a spiritual awakening, man. And so my sponsor rolled up, and he took me to a meeting, and And, I realized that, I mean, I had been doing work, but I kind of, my priorities weren't quite there because maybe I got a little cocky. I thought that I got this. I thought, this daily thing about, getting centered and grounded and making sure that I'm going to apply principles today, and I'm going to be honest with myself, and I'm going to ask for help, and I'm going to be transparent and not hide my shit, and, I didn't do that. I failed. And it, when I got into self-pity and all of that, it just lit, like a fuse. It was like a rocket fuel to my addiction. It always had been, and it was still there, and I was more vigilant after that. And, I 30 days later, I was like, it was almost like it didn't happen, but I had learned a really valuable lesson. And I committed to following a path, a spiritual path of just, my own path and connecting with my higher power and making it the first thing in my life. Because if I didn't, I knew that, bad days are going to come, and days are going to come where I'm off and I'm not grounded. And without doing that every day and following that path, I knew that, that could repeat itself. And, so anyway, I was only out like 2 hours, man. And so that was good. And, last time, and, we wound up getting married, and I wound up, helping other people. And I found a job, doing software, and I worked hard, man. My wife got pregnant, and I wound up after a few years, I started a startup in Clearwater, Florida, and they like blew up, man. And I wound up becoming the director of software development for this company. We've become an international company, and I was working, with like 35 developers, 40, and guys that I worked with, and they just, I just, by applying the principles of recovery, people like me. I found out that I was likable. I was a good guy. I could do things. I did have skills, and if I just put in the work, man, that life got really good, and it was challenging. It was difficult, but it was very rewarding and satisfying knowing that I did have what it takes. That I wasn't a piece of shit. I was so much more than that. And that's what recovery gave me. And by doing the steps and working with a sponsor and having a support group, and our, my sponsee family, we would meet monthly and have dinner and, do work and, talk. And that became very important to me in my recovery. And anyway, my son Levi was born in 2014, and in 2016, my son Finley was born. And, around then I wound up, I became a homeowner, and here I am, a homeowner. I have 2 cars, and I've been living in Florida in a nice neighborhood. And I'm the director of software development for this company that makes banking software. Imagine that. So
full circle.
Yeah, it was totally full circle. And I began to get afraid, man, because I didn't want my wife's mom friends, or, kids and all that to find out about me. And I didn't want my work's business partners to find out about me and my past, because I was afraid I'd get fired and lose all this. And, I found myself like living a double life, and, and being afraid. And, so I don't know. I just felt that it was the right thing for me to do to, I started writing a book, and I started, speaking at high schools around Pinellas County, Florida, where I'm from. And I even got invited to join the Rotary Club in Safety Harbor, where the actual town where I grew up. And so anyway, I came out one day on social media. I said I'm coming out of the closet, and that was a real attention grabber. And so I just told my story, and about, kind of like I have here, and what recovery had done in my life, and how grateful I was, and how exciting I was to be living the dream, and all the prison and the insanity. I mentioned that, and I had been afraid that people were going to reject me, and that somehow I would lose what I had gained, and I found it was just the opposite, that people were like, man, I'm honored to know somebody like you. One guy told me in the hallway at work when he stopped me. And so anyway, I started speaking more and helping more, and, doing things like that, and doing some coaching. Anyway, recovery has given me, the kind of the life that I'd never thought that I could have, but I did. And it's for me, it's like nothing short of a miracle, I'm my dad, who passed in 2016, he was proud of me, and he knew that the person that he always saw in me had come finally, and other family members as well. And then most importantly, me, I was able to look in the mirror and love the person I see finally, and what a beautiful thing it is and continues to be. And, raising like my boys are 4 and 6, and life's busy at work, and I'm trying to do this other thing. I really wanted to make a living and do full time helping people and speaking and putting together some online courses and doing all these things that are getting pretty. You see it all around you nowadays, and I just wanted to do that because I'm so passionate about recovery and what it can do in people's lives. And the miracle that has taken place in my life, I know and I believe that can happen to anyone. And what success looks like for people is different. It depends what you're into. With so everybody doesn't have the same story, but I still believe that that anyone can live the dream, whatever that means for them, and find freedom and a new way to live, and so on and so forth. So. My wife and I talked about it. We decided to sell our house, and we bought it. And so now we're traveling the country. And at the moment, I'm stuck in Texas with the snow and everything. But so we're doing like a book tour, and she's teaching yoga. She does yoga for recovery, and she teaches that remotely and stuff. And we're just giving it a year and a half or so to see if we can make this work. I quit my job and just totally focusing on this and just living in the moment and being of service in ways that I only dreamed of like last year. And so I'm in a good place, man. And this is, what recovery has done for me, has taken me literally, from the gutter and brought me to this place where of peace and goodness and all of that. And not to say that it's easy all the time, because I still have all those same defects. I don't think I've gotten rid of any of them, the defects or whatever you want to call them, character flaws, or depending on what your recovery style is, and but shortcomings, and but today I have tools that I can recognize and deal with those, and so they don't become a deficit in my life, and so they don't cause me to steer my life into a ditch anymore, and I'm really grateful to be here, and really glad to be on your podcast finally, and to share my story, and so there you go.
All right, that was awesome, man. Yeah. I don't think I've ever actually talked to anybody that legit robbed a bank, so I'm actually super delighted about that. And I really thank you for sharing that. Eric, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask the first question.
Go right ahead.
All right. So, Don, did you have to, or have you had to do any work in recovery to deal with any of that, early emotional trauma, and how you talked about disassociating from your emotions? Have you had to try and repair that in recovery, and what sort of stuff did that entail?
Yeah. Well, the answer is yes. And at first I was doing it and not even realizing it, because my my sponsor gave me some kind of like assignments. When I first came in the rooms, my sponsor gave me this assignment that at the end of every meeting, and I go to the fellowship I go to, they ask if you have a burning desire,
Mm-hmm.
and if you feel like you're going to use it, there's a huge thing you just need to get off your chest. And he told me at that point during the meeting, I need to raise my hand and say that my name is Don, I'm an addict, and today I have a choice. Thank you for letting me share, and so I did that. And, 60 days later, it was, some people would laugh when I would raise my hand because they knew it was coming. And I even had some people that would come up to me after the meeting that didn't know me, and they thought like I was a guru because the way that I said it was like, just, oh wow, I have a choice. That's intense, man. And so, but the thing was, is for me, what it did for me is it I don't know, it became part of my actual, it empowered me, and on some level, and some, I internalized that, and I knew that, yeah, man, today I do have a choice, and that, when I feel like for me, that and that kind of aha moment that I told you about, that I am a good person, and I do deserve a good life, and I am worth fighting for, and my life is precious, and I am going to give a fuck about it, and feeling like that is a huge kind of defense, if you will, or it helps when those feelings come that are triggered from pain points long ago, and even if I don't understand it, even if I don't know with a specific tool to deal with that in a really, to go back and to heal that or whatever, knowing that I don't deserve to put myself through that crap anymore, is a huge help. And so that was the first thing, I believe. And when I did go through my step work and step 4, and I realized that on a deeper level that all the people that I had an issue with, that I was mad at my mom because, I felt like I was abandoned at that drug program, I mean, she said, we're going into school, and I looked up, and there's these 2 older boys, like football players, coming to pin me down in this chair, and boom, she was out the door, and what the hell, and I'm stuck here now, and I just wanted to go home. I wanted to, okay, I'll stop using drugs. I want to play baseball again. I want to play my guitar again. I'll go to school and I won't skip. And these are the things, how do I get home? And I felt like really abandoned. And I remember when we did step work around that issue that, I realized as I wrote and I talked about it, and all these feelings came up, that self-acceptance and accepting that I have feelings and that it's okay to acknowledge them and to let them come up and to experience them. That was a huge part of the work, not just for that particular, situation, but for a lot of things, and I allowed myself to start feeling again. They say that when you put down the drugs or whatever, that the good news is that you can feel again. The bad news is that you can feel again. And for me, that took on quite a different meaning, because I didn't necessarily, it was hard for me to feel, and it still is sometimes. I have a delayed reaction, like some really bad shit can happen and I will just not even, okay, that happened, and it might be a day or two until I go, whoa, and I'll feel about it, and so my feelings are not always appropriate on that level, but I do know how to acknowledge them and deal with them. And so, I got outside help as well, and I saw a therapist for a while. Just a lot of the, it wasn't so much that, my life was unmanageable, but I thought that I could just benefit by getting some input about, the way, I had a pretty crazy, childhood, and then all the prison and everything like that, and I felt that I could get maybe some closure on some things if I sought out some help. In recovery, it taught me that it's okay to ask for help, that's how we get better, is asking for help. And so I did. And I found it to be very helpful. They did some kind of, asked me a lot of questions and had me do some visualization and kind of different like techniques that made me see things in a whole new way. And it basically just allowed me to let go of some things and see it as it was and say, yes, this is my truth, that it's okay that I felt abandoned, or it's okay that I was abused, or not it was okay that I was abused, but I mean, I'm okay with it, and I can let that, acknowledge it, know that I was wronged, and not, and I have a tool now, you know what I mean? And to, it involved re-experiencing some emotions, but it also allowed me to let some things go, and stop allowing that to affect me in the present, and so yeah, man, that's does that kind of address that in a way?
Yeah, that's perfect.
All right.
What you got, Eric?
So I have to ask this question because it's what I keep thinking about, and maybe there isn't an answer to it, but why banks? Like, I'm just like curious. Well, I'm curious of the thought process, like, because I don't know. We a lot of our friends did, B&Es or broke into cars, but no one was ballsy enough to
100%
do a bank. I'm just curious, like,
no,
how did you get to like that decision?
Yeah, like it's a huge leap, right?
Yeah.
I could say that, well, because that's like where the money is, but it wasn't really that. This is the crazy part, I mean, I was always like kind of like a daredevil and thrill seeker, and I mean, when I got clean, I went skydiving and I did other things, and I like the rush and adrenaline and all that. So I don't know what factor that had in there, and I'm sure it was there somewhere, but I do know that when I decided to do what I did, I was like up for days and delusional, and I thought, and this is going to sound really crazy, man, but I felt like I was part of a government plot. Like I'm supposed to go into that bank, and they're going to look at me, and they're going to recognize me, and they're going to hand me the money because they know I'm the guy that they're supposed to give it to because they're like expecting me, kind of thing.
Wow.
And I know that's really, really insane. But yet at the same time, there was, is that true or not, or am I just freaking out? And so I was still like sweating balls when I went in there. It's not like I was. So it was just like a mixture of a whole. I was just messed up,
Yeah.
And so I would get in a state, and then afterwards I would just be freaking out, wondering like what the hell just happened, and why did it happen? And like I said at first, I did a lot of time, even though I had explained to my public defender I never had a paid attorney. What I experienced, and it didn't really matter, but the last time it did. They were like, well, that doesn't sound right. It's not like you, and then so they referred me, and I'm glad they did. I wound up, all that was dropped, and here I am. So that's just been my addiction took me, and I think that somewhere, this is my own suspicion, because going back and looking at it, it's hard to untangle all that, but I feel like I had this deep paranoia and fear, and I felt like I had betrayed myself. I was a traitor to my own self, and somehow the dope and my family, and I think that just really really messed with me. And when I would be up for days, and I just did some crazy shit, man. And so yeah, that's probably about as best as I can answer that. And I never oh yeah, I'm going to go rob that bank and get money and go do drugs, and boom, that's clear cut why I'm doing it. It was like all this other stuff too, and so.
No, I mean nothing good has ever happened after being up for 48 hours or more. So yeah,
No.
I can understand how things could go awry.
Yeah. The best thing that happens after being up that long is like finally falling asleep again.
Yep.
That's about it.
Not hearing the birds in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, David.
All right. All right. You talked a lot about like having that feeling that you just didn't fit in, that you really couldn't find your place in the world. And I hear that a lot. Like that's a pretty common thread amongst us addicts. And the way I think of it, I hope you've seen Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer with the Island of Misfit Toys. And I've always equated recovery to the Island of Misfit Toys. It's just the only place like where the misfits fit in is the Island of Misfit Toys. Because like when I came to recovery, I started to have that feeling that I was accepted. So can you like describe for you like why that is?
The like why, you know, how you mean kind of like how that played out for me, or the kind of idea and all that. Well, I definitely felt like I was a misfit, you know, and I felt like my history just was like evidence of that, and that there was something wrong with me and all of that. And you know, I know that a lot of people in recovery feel that way too. And you know, I mean, if I had not got put away when I was 13 and I just kind of struggled through high school and all this, and I wound up, you know, whatever, I would have still felt that way. You know, it just wouldn't have been reinforced so hard. So I definitely understand why that's such a widely, you know, kind of, a lot of people have experienced that. But for me, I just know that it was like amplified massively by being separated from society for so long, and you know, and like all the crazy experiences that I had, and the fear of what people would think of me because of that, and like even you know, it's like I felt like even just dating, you know, I mean, how like I when after I got out that last time, I thought, well, how am I gonna, you know, what kind of woman would want to even go out with me, you know? And if they do go out with me, they must be really fucked up, you know what I mean? So you know, yeah, I wouldn't want that person to become the mother of my children, you know? And so it's like, I experienced that, and I know that like during that time when I first started going to meetings, I would like disqualify myself from recovery because like before I became homeless again and I lost my car, and I still had a job, and this was after the cocaine arrest. I would go to a meeting and I would think, man, I have a car out there and I have a house that I live in, and these are just a bunch of freaking drug addicts, and I'm different than them. And then, you know, a few years later, it was these people got cars and they got houses, and I'm homeless, and I'm just a freaking drug addict, and I don't have anything in common with them. You know, it's just funny how it can flip like that, and I still wanted to try to exclude myself. You know.
Yeah.
And, you know, and for a while in early recovery, for me, I felt like I only fit in with the misfits, you know?
Yep.
But I kind of don't, I mean, I get that. And there's a certain feeling of being at home around sharing with other addicts and so forth. And I get that. But a lot of that is lifted for me because I like when, you know, like, for example, when I had my boys, you know, and I would go out and I would see other parents for their kids, I felt like I identified with them on some level because they're part of the parent community, you know. And then when I go to work, I feel like I identify with them because they're part of my work community. And I don't know, I felt like that I didn't have to be identified by my status as an addict so strongly. I mean, I have to know who I am and where I come from and never forget that, but at the same time, that's not what defines me. You know, and that has allowed me. That's allowed me to like connect with people on a real and genuine and heartfelt level. That, you know, that that had I stuck with just feeling like I can only be with normies, or I can't be with normies because I can only be with my strangies. I don't know. Like then how there would be a lot of opportunities and just rich experiences that I would have. Not allowed myself to experience, and so it's opened a lot of doors for me, and I can still be in recovery, and as well, you know. So I don't feel the same on that anymore, and my deeper connection is the fact that, you know, I'm a human being, and I want the same thing as everybody else, whether they're in recovery or not, and that's to feel that they're of value and that they have meaning and purpose in their life, and they want to be loved, you know, and appreciated and heard, and you know, so yeah, I guess I don't know if that kind of addresses that, but that's kind of been my
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that was fantastic.
yeah.
So
Back to you, Eric, with the weather.
So you mentioned during one of your stints that you got heavily into religion, and I'm curious, have you continued with any sorts of religion on your path, and what's kind of your relationship with that today?
Well, it's kind of funny, but it's like a yes and no thing with that. I mean, I do have a spiritual path, but it's not like religious, you know. I do tend to identify more with like a oneness and kind of thing where I don't approach things as though there is this cosmic battle between good and evil, and one's going to rise the victor, and all the religious systems that kind of follow that pattern, you know. But you know, I just try to focus on connection, because I believe that spirit or the universe or whatever it is, that we're all made of the same stuff ultimately, that we all come from the same the same thing, and that we will return to it as well, and that I, because of that, you and I are equal and deserving of honor and respect and dignity, and that is what I know to be true for me, and the way I look at things. And so religion, not so much, but I believe that also, you know, at the same time, I believe that there's purpose and meaning to things, that there is like the forest or whatever you want to call it, that is good, and you know, they told me early on that you know, that when I explore and find my higher power, that whatever it was, that the suggestion would be that it's loving and kind, you know. And you know, that wasn't really a problem for me, because I kind of come to some beliefs for myself about how, you know, what my relationships to that is, and kind and loving. I think that's in my heart, and I believe it's in your heart, and I believe that's a reflection of what is, and I believe that my higher power is kind and loving, so and I believe in power, man. I believe that, like, these principles that we talk about and we aspire to, and we want to follow, that when we do follow them and we have faith and we have in them, and trusting the process and stuff like that, man, miracles really do happen, you know. And I believe like that. My life is like evidence of that, and you know, so for me, and in prison, you know, I went on this thing where at first I was a fundamental, you know, I was involved in a fundamental religion for a long time, and kind of from my childhood, and then I went way to the other spectrum, and I meditated till I almost floated off my bunk, you know, and in the end, I just didn't. I couldn't intellectually, you know, and I couldn't like say this is right or that's wrong or whatever. I just didn't know, but I know that I'm here and that I exist and that I am part of all this, and that it's okay. You know, I don't have to know. And I kind of moved from looking at things from being having to define it, rather than I just need to participate in it, whatever it is, and to trust and that's, to me, that's like real faith. You know, I don't have to know. I have to have the answer that satisfies my, you know, itch to need something certain, you know. And so, yeah, there you go.
All right. Fantastic. All right. I got one final question. So you did a fair amount of time in jail, and I've heard, and I think it's a pretty common thing, that transition from like long-term institutionalization to like back to the free world, it's difficult. So I was wondering, could you give me 2 do's and 2 don'ts in the transitioning process from long-term jail time? Just for anybody out there who like might be listening and like they might be going through it right now. Like what should they try to do and what should they avoid?
Yeah. Okay. For two do's, I would say the first do would be to connect with other people.
Mm-hmm.
That could be hard, man. That could, and well, I mean, I know it is hard. It's there's a lot of fear involved with that and pushing through that, and but you got to do that, and you have to
Mm-hmm.
push through that fear and find some groups, and there's support groups for everything. And so for an addict, I mean, the go-to place would be, or an alcoholic, the place would be go to be a 12-step fellowship. But for people who just, I don't know, I guess that's the context here, right? So definitely go to meetings, and I found that, and although I found recovery within the rooms and 12-step. I'm not closed-minded, and I there's probably stuff that works for people, and I know people, but the rooms. The cool thing about the rooms, I feel like, is it's, for one, free, and there's a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you can find a meeting anywhere, and it's a safe place to try new things, and to develop relationships and find out what works and what doesn't work. For someone who doesn't know how to do all that shit, and doesn't have a safety net and a network of people, it's the best place to do that. You can make a mistake, you can get in the wrong relationship, just stay there and stay clean, and okay, well, we move on and we learn from that, or you can do this, or you can, I mean, all those mistakes that people make, and in recovery, and that's why we have the fellowship. It's a safe place, and so that would be the one do. And another do, I would say, is to, gosh, I almost want to repeat that as a second do, just to emphasize how important it is. But the other thing, I guess I would say, is to reach out to a spiritual community, whatever even apart from the rooms, and to get involved there, and because generally speaking, those communities are going to have people who care and who love, and people need that, especially when they're getting out of a long period of isolation and are trying to get on their feet and to feel accepted. I think it's I know some people need to be put away. I mean, you can start types of crimes that people need to be put away, but generally speaking, when you violate someone's property or something like that, obviously you have some social issues because you're not empathetic towards people by stealing their shit, but putting you away from people is not going to solve that problem. You know what I mean? And the solution is how to really relate to people, how to make amends to people, and give them their shit back, or give them other shit, or somehow go through a healing process. And that, unfortunately, that there's not a system for that, but spiritual provide a context for some of those principles. So I would say to do that, and some of the don'ts, and I guess the opposite of the connection thing would be don't isolate, and don't lie to yourself. There's a quote from Paulo Coelho I always like. This is, if you want to be successful, you must always respect this one rule: do not lie to yourself. And that's easy to say, but I mean, it's really easy to do the comfortable thing, and to just, for like someone getting out like me, to not want to practice courage, and just isolate and be alone, and to do that first one or whatever, and just but to make it a practice to not lie to yourself, and don't do that, and show yourself some love, and do the right thing for yourself, and so forth. So
all right,
don't hang out with other felons. I mean, I could say that too. I mean, that's kind of like, okay, I mean, we know that, and don't go to bars or whatever, but so
yeah.
All
right.
Yeah, I'm really glad to hook up and to be here, and I just thought of it. I didn't know what you're doing with show notes and stuff like that, but I'm not here to plug my book, but I can give you the title of it, the name, if you're interested. And
of course, Don. Please, where where can our listeners find you? And definitely, where can they look for your book?
Yeah, plug your book, man.
Okay, yeah. Okay, well, here I go. So, well, you can find me if you just Google Don Cummins, Cummins. There's no G in it. And after that, you can put Don Cummins speaker or Don Cummins book or anything like that, and boom, there it'll be. And the book is The Prison Within, a memoir of breaking free, and it details some of the stuff I just said and talked about and shared about, and I wrote it. I don't think it's going to be it's well written. It really is. It got good reviews, and the people have read it and told them how it impacted them, and but those recovery memoirs, there's a whole genre of that. And they're never going to be a number one on Oprah's book thing, but that's not why I wrote it. And I feel like that in that book that there's the messages there that someone could really read that and see and say, oh man, I am worth it too. I am worth fighting for. Damn it, I'm going to do something different. And so I'm excited about that for that reason. I was able to actually write a book, man. So that's like really cool. And
yeah,
you can find it there and check it out. Anybody who's interested, and I'm doing some other stuff too, but it's all there. If you go to like my site, it'll lead you to the stuff. So yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, do you have any more questions, Eric?
No, I think we're good on that front, David. It's been
right.
It's been so long, I almost forget how we close. Do you go first? Do I go first? Help me out
first,
here.
We would like to thank our guest Don for joining us this evening.
Woo!
Right, yeah.
You did a great job, man. And I want to give you one more quick minute, a quick message to anybody out there who's listening and struggling. What do you have to say to them to give them a message of hope?
I want to say that you are worth fighting for, that you have something unique and something good about you that all of us need to see, that we're just waiting on you to discover it, develop it, and give it back to us. And that the way that you can find that out is by giving yourself a break and realizing that you are worth fighting for, and ask for help and go to a meeting. And if you're already going, then just keep going and throw yourself into recovery. And if you do, buckle up your seatbelt, because you're in for one hell of a ride. And and what a good ride it is. So
awesome.
That'll be it.
All right, Eric, would you like to regale our listeners with our media statement?
Sure, I can do that. So we are, fully self-supporting here at Podcast Recovery, and we need your support to help keep the mics on. So if you would like to become a Patreon member, please join our Patreon, or support us on any of our websites or social media at Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, or anywhere else you find your podcast. And please don't forget, subscribe, like, comment, and yeah, back to you, David.
All right. Here at Podcast Recovery, we are aiming to expand the scope of support for recovering addicts. Accessibility and convenience of helpful services is paramount to combating addiction. We work to bring the message of recovery to every addict, wherever and whenever it is needed. We believe that a powerful voice of recovery should be obtainable, practical, and at the touch of a button. Every addict deserves to hear a message of hope, and Podcast Recovery is here to provide it. All right, everybody, thanks for joining us once again. And just like Eric said, like, share, subscribe on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Please become a member of the home group. And if you shout out your name and your address, we will send you a brand new Podcast Recovery bracelet to show some support and become part of the family.
I forgot about that. We have Livestrong bracelets now.
Yeah, we got some stuff. And Don, if you want one, give me an address and I will put one in an envelope and a little note to you and send one out your way, man. All
right, dude. I will do that. I'll take you up on it.
Absolutely. And most importantly, everybody out there, stay safe and stay clean.